Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are ESPN senior writer Mark Ogden and the Daily Mail's football editor Ian Ladyman. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through the Back Pages. Times Sports section has an image of Oscar Piastri. Molly Hudson has an interview with McLaren driver following his win at the Chinese Grand Prix. Also carried Pep Guardiola's comment bonus. We don't deserve a watch, says the City boss, if Manchester City win the Club World Cup. Manchester City, also the lead story on the back page of the Daily Mail. City fan fury, the headline, though, as some fans plan a protest at the next game over ticket prices and the sale of ticket prices, or where tickets are sold, sorry. They also have the image of Cole Palmer, who's back in training for Chelsea, and Craig Hope writes about Newcastle's Carabao Cup parade on Saturday. 200,000 fans expected to greet the Cup heroes. Back page of The Sun has Guardiola's line on bonuses, also carry the image of Jean-Philippe Mateta, who's fit to return for Crystal Palace and will wear a water polo style ear protection in the FA Cup. Also a Chelsea story. Dan King writes that Enzo Rapp for Blue Shirkers, saying Maresca has called a day off after Chelsea's first team loss to the under-21s in training. And the Star lead with Pep's comments, never mind the Rolex Guardiola, we don't even deserve a watch if we win Cup. And Chris McKenna writes, Cop put on Kirkes alert. Bournemouth left-back claims he wants to play at a high level amid speculation of Liverpool interest. Let's go to the front back page of The Sun. Ian, come to you for this. Bonus ball, Pep. I don't deserve trophy tip. Neither him nor his players, Ian. What did you make of Pep? Quite amusing form in a way, wasn't he? But clearly unhappy with the season's work.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Guardiola is that whenever he's asked about the Club World Cup, he tends to deflect. He was asked about it 3 or 4 weeks ago and suggested that he was going to take his golf clubs, he was going to play golf because the golf courses were nice. He was saying that the fact that the players would be invited to take the wives and the children with them, just kind of giving that impression that he wasn't taking it all that seriously. Been asked about it again today, and now he's talked about this. Now look, players have bonuses written into their contracts. The Man City players obviously will get win bonuses if they win games at the Club World Cup, and if they win the tournament. But what was more interesting is what this says about Guardiola and his level of interest in this tournament. Now I don't know, but Pep rarely says anything without a reason. And the fact that he keeps talking this tournament down, I noticed today he said something about, oh, well, it's the tournaments for the club, it's for the club. I'm not totally convinced that he's massively enthusiastic about this tournament. If they go all the way and get to the final, it will be a month, and we know what that will do to City players. We know how packed the schedule is, for example. And let's face it, Manchester City, given the season that they have had so far, absolutely look like a team of players and probably a coach who need a month off. They look like they need a reset. They look like they need a rest mentally and physically to come back next season and try and put all of the things that have gone wrong this season in the Premier League and the Champions League right. Like I say, I'm not absolutely convinced from the way Pep talks that he's totally sold on this tournament, regardless of whether he thinks his team should get bonuses for winning it or not.
It's interesting, the subtext that you read into it, Ian. Mark, the headline in the back page of the Express, no time for a bonus. Pep Guardiola claims his players and staff do not deserve a bonus this season. Quote here, as managers, staff, players, we don't deserve it, not even a watch of the Manchester City manager. Do you share what's implied there, Mark? Ian's read that it is basically saying it doesn't quantify success winning the Club World Cup, even if it makes you very wealthy.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Ian took the words out of my mouth, because I noticed that quote as well about Pep saying it's for the club, stressing it's for the club, and, by definition, it's not for the players. And, Ian's right, it is a case whereby Man City, if they go all the way, I think they'll be finishing the 14th of July, which is, I think, less than a month before the start of the Premier League season. So his players won't be getting any rest. And, I've been told that certainly for the first couple of games of the Club World Cup, they might be playing an unfamiliar team, shall we say, with the likes of Nico O'Reilly, James McAtee, players that you wouldn't normally associate with a Man City first team. So whether they think they can get through those early rounds by resting the players and trying to get to the knockout stage. But the situation is, I think it's £97 million for the team that wins it. So it is for the club. It is for the club to, pay the wages. That City got a massive wage bill. They've got a huge kind of transfer budget, as we know. So it's purely a club thing, and I think Pep's right to have a bit of disdain for it because it's at the wrong time of the football calendar. It's when players should be resting. So if he is deciding to play golf and he's deciding to play his fringe players, then fair enough. And I think he's obviously focusing on next season because he knows that if he plays all these big players, the team are going to suffer for it next season. And they may have another season next year when they don't win the Premier League, don't win the Champions League, and that is really what Man City should be looking to do, not win a tournament that's just come out of nowhere. And that, yes, it's worth a lot of money, but to the point of the bonuses, he's right in the sense that City players haven't really earned any bonuses, but if they win the FA Cup, they'll have earned one because they'll have won a major trophy, and that is what players are there to do. If they miss out on the Champions League, I suspect the contracts will not have a bonus for failing to qualify for the Champions League. So it's on the players. If they match up what their contract says, and if they deliver success in whatever tournament, they'll be paid for it. But if they miss out, they'll get nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting, the permutations at the end of the season. It's still feasible, Ian, when you look at it, for them to finish third at least in the Premier League. Back page of the Star, never mind the Rolex, Guardiola, Rolex, we don't even deserve a watch if we win World Cup. He's collectively calling staff and players along with himself. Do you think deep down Guardiola blames himself, though, more than the players, Ian? What's your assessment? Because presumably a lot of people saying they're just running on steam, the players.
Well, he will. I mean, if he's ever spent any time around Pep Guardiola or in his dressing room or even in his press conferences will tell you that nobody internalises angst and frustration and disappointment quite like he does. We've seen some of the body language from him this season, the scratches on the head, etc. You can see the frustration, the disappointment seeping out of every pore. And yeah, if Guardiola were to be asked to write a list of who he blames for what's gone wrong this season, his name will absolutely be at the top of that list. Now, did he see the drop-off from players like Kyle Walker, Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, Ilkay Gundogan, Jack Grealish, the injury to Rodri? Did he see those things coming? No, he didn't. But he'll be asking himself that probably he should have, because that is his job. And I was talking to Jack Gorn, our Manchester City correspondent, a couple of days ago about this and whether, if City were to completely fall away towards the end of the season, not even make it into the Champions League, they'll have to finish outside the top 5 for that, so it's unlikely. But if it happened, I was talking to Jack about the potential of Pep walking away out of embarrassment, and Jack said to me that he actually thinks it's the opposite, that kind of failure would only drive Guardiola on, make him stay, essentially to put right all the things that he will be thinking he's got wrong over the course of the last 8 or 9 months.
Interesting, and I'll stay with you then for the next story, because it is by your colleague Jack Gorn, but it regards Manchester City, but also a use of a resale website for tickets. City fan fury protest at next game over club's controversial deal with ticket resale site. Could you just tell us a little bit about Jack's piece here, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's probably a subtext to this as well. I mean, look, I'm not a fan of ticket resale sites. I'm not particularly a fan of official ticket sites, never mind resale sites. This isn't, look, from a PR point of view, this is not a great look from Manchester City to be seen to essentially reselling their own hospitality tickets on a resale site that they are now officially partnered with. It doesn't look great. Their argument is that there will be no price gouging. In other words, kind of what they call when the prices can go up in relation to demand. The ticket prices themselves will be capped. It's only for hospitality. But all of this plays to a greater issue at Manchester City, which is about atmosphere, and Manchester City fans who probably are aware that the Etihad is it is not the worst atmosphere in the Premier League by some distance. Equally, it's sometimes not the best, and City fans have become frustrated with fans of their opponents turning up in the home end, and there's a frustration about that. They blame the club for that. They think there's been a lack of dialogue from the club's point of view about tickets and about ticket prices, and all that plays to a general sense of frustration at Manchester City among the supporters about what goes on in the stadium on a match day.
OK, we'll keep across that situation. There are a lot of ticket stories at the moment, of course. Difficult time in the country for football fans and everyone. But let's talk about Cole Palmer, who's had a difficult time for form recently. Back page of the Mail, just above that City story. Look who's back. Blues boost. Cole Palmer trains with Chelsea after missing 3 games with a muscle injury. Mark, do you think it's going to be an important end to the season for Palmer? 10 games without a goal. First real wobble of his career, I suppose.
It is, yeah. And, his loss of form has coincided with Chelsea's loss of form, which may have started just a little before Palmer stopped scoring goals. But, he is their guy. He's their talisman, isn't he? And he's obviously got a week to get fit for the Chelsea game. I think it's next Thursday, so he should be fit for that game. But, Cole Palmer's situation at Chelsea is interesting. He signed a really long contract earlier this season, I think an 8 or 9 year contract. But if they miss out on the Champions League again this season, which is possible because obviously such a tight race at the top, the questions will be asked, how long will Cole Palmer decide he can fulfil his ambitions at Chelsea, because he's a Champions League player. He's a player that should be at the very top level. And the situation he's got there is that he's on such a long contract. Can he get out of that contract if he feels that Chelsea are plateauing or flatlining and not going where he wants them to go? Because they have tailed off, and the form they're showing now, Chelsea, is that they may miss out on the Champions League. So that is not where Chelsea need to be. But he's their best player. He's also their most saleable asset if they decide to rotate the squad. Listen, it'd be crazy if Chelsea even thought about selling Cole Palmer, but Chelsea do things differently to every other club. They see a player that they can cash in on. They've turned over so many players in the last 2 years that I don't think anybody is not for sale at Chelsea, even Cole Palmer. So if they don't get in the Champions League, and if he can't help them get in the Champions League, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't think he would go this summer, but I do think it might sow seeds of unhappiness that he doesn't want to spend his career at a club that's not playing at the highest level. So, maybe the clock could be ticking on Palmer if he doesn't get what he wants in terms of Champions League football in the next 12 months.
What do you make of that, Ian? Palmer's situation and Chelsea's overall, I suppose, currently sit 4th, lost 3 of their last 5. Does it feel like this is important to maybe protect against another summer of flux that Enzo Maresca gets them over the line with Cole Palmer front and centre?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there has been improvement at Chelsea this season. It's relative. A lot of Chelsea fans are disappointed because Chelsea started so well and looked for a very brief amount of time as though they might even be a third horse in the title race. That feeling didn't last very long. But I think there has been some progression. I think Enzo Maresca is a decent coach, but as ever at Chelsea, you have to be moving forward. They'll have to be in the Champions League for Maresca to be sure of his position going forward. But if they do that, and they sign, it's ifs and buts. But they have some of those transfers that we all laughed at have turned out to be better than we thought. If they can turn the wheel again with a couple and add a bit of depth of quality and I think as important experience to that squad, then I think there is a kernel there of something there at Stamford Bridge. But it all depends, of course, on what the owners do. Whether the owners will do what they haven't done before and place some loyalty in a coach and do things sensibly. I absolutely agree with what Mark says. Cole Palmer is the best player in that Chelsea squad by some distance, and there's absolutely no way that he's going to contemplate a couple of seasons, even more than a season, standing still, because he's a player who's destined and born to move forwards.
We'll see if Palmer's back for the Spurs game. Big one for Chelsea next week. Mark and Ian, thank you very much for now. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including Mark's piece on Marcus Rashford and this in The Sun: water polo protection for Mateta. Welcome back. You are watching Back Pages tonight, and it's welcome back to ESPN senior writer Mark Ogden and the Daily Mail's football editor Ian Ladyman. Let's come to you, Mark, and a piece that you've put out on ESPN regarding Marcus Rashford. Is Rashford back in form for Villa, England, or is it a false dawn? Tell us why you pursued this piece, Mark, and what you found.
Well, obviously, at the weekend he's set to play his 10th game for Aston Villa since his loan from Man United. I just wanted to kind of work out whether he's actually raising his game or whether he's not actually doing as much as we think he is, because he was recalled to the England squad. And I think the England recall may have kind of altered the perception of Rashford a little bit. But I looked at some data and I was kind of surprised by what it threw up. And obviously, he hasn't scored yet for Villa in 9 games, but he's created 4 assists, all 4 for Marco Asensio. So there's a positivity there that he's doing better because he's creating goals for Asensio. But I was kind of surprised to find out, considering that a lot of people criticise his work rate for Man United, that over 90 minutes, he had more sprints per 90 minutes for Man United than he has done for Aston Villa. So it seems he was working harder for United than Villa, or whether he's working smarter for Villa than United. So it's difficult to pin down whether he's making more of an impact at Villa than we thought he was. But I must admit, from what I've seen, I was at the England game on Monday, I'm not quite sure Marcus Rashford is quite the player that he was. He seems to have lost that ability to take a player on and beat a player and show the ambition. He seems to be a little bit afraid to go at a man. There's a quote from Ian Wright in the piece where Ian Wright says that he's lost that ability to take a man on, to be willing to fail. It's almost like he's frightened to fail, to take a player on and go past him and risk not being able to go past him. And he seems to have lost that ability, and he's more inclined to pass the ball sideways. So from my perspective, I don't think he's moved on that much, and it's a big situation for Villa because they've got a £40 million agreement to sign him at the end of the season if they, in terms of the option to buy. So it's a big decision, and United obviously want him off the books. But has he done enough for Villa to justify a transfer? I'm not quite sure he has, but obviously he's got a Champions League campaign at Villa. He's got the FA Cup still to play. He can still play a big part for Villa, but right now I think it's 50-50 that he's got a future at Villa and he may end up back at United.
Interesting. I suppose he's been rebuilding his match fitness as well, Ian. What's your reflection on it? Do you think in the media we've got carried away with a tale of redemption for Rashford? Is there maybe a less exciting truth?
I mean, look, it always happens when this type of story is a familiar one. Big name player struggles at big club, moves to another club, often on loan, gets a few games, change of environment. People get excited, people overreact. It does happen. However, let's be clear. I tell you who will be happy with Marcus Rashford, and that's Aston Villa, because he's gone there. By all accounts, his attitude has been absolutely as they would hope it would be, and he's done what they want him to do. Often coming off the substitutes bench, the assists there that Mark mentioned. So I think he's ticking the box for Villa. In terms of whether there's a future for him at Villa, there's a huge question mark over that. He's contracted at Manchester United until 2028. Mark mentioned £40 million there, plus the wages at around about £300,000 a week, whatever they are at Manchester United. That's a huge commitment for a club like Aston Villa, who are pretty close, or have been historically pretty close to their ceiling when it comes to the Premier League spending limits. So it's a huge commitment for Villa, and Villa will have to decide when they go to spend whatever money they've got for Unai Emery in the summer, whether they're going to splurge 40 million quid of it plus all those wages on someone who so far has done his best work as a substitute. So I think there has been progress for Marcus. I think yes, sometimes these things can be exaggerated. I felt a little bit sorry for him. I was at both the England games. I was surprised that he's played in both of them. I don't think he would have played in the second one had Anthony Gordon been fit. But he played in both. I thought his attitude was fine. I think he did what Thomas Tuchel wanted him to try to do, which was to go at players. That's really hard when you're playing against teams like Albania and Latvia who sit there with 10 men behind the ball. Mark talks about him losing the ability to beat a man. I noticed a few times, especially against Latvia, that he would actually beat his man and then find another man standing right behind that man because the way that Latvia was set up. So it wasn't easy. I thought Tuchel probably could have bitten his tongue when he called him out a little bit and Phil Foden out a little bit after the first game. Not sure anybody really needed that. Yeah, I think, look, big 7 weeks ahead for Marcus Rashford. I think if he's going to win that transfer for Villa, he probably will have to maybe do a little bit more, force himself into that team, be a starter. Can't see Villa paying all that money for a substitute. But equally, he's got to have in the front of his mind that if it doesn't work at Villa, in terms of if Villa decide that outlay is not for them. He's got to make sure that he's giving himself a platform for somebody else to then come in and spend that money, because I really don't see him having a future at Manchester United under Ruben Amorim. I don't really see that at all.
OK, we'll see how Rashford gets on for Villa if he features in the FA Cup on Sunday at Preston. Crystal Palace are at Fulham Saturday lunchtime in the FA Cup. Jean-Philippe Mateta seemingly back for that. Back page of The Sun, water polo protection for Mateta is the headline mark. Boss Mock's headband. To what extent does this reflect the magnitude of the game that they're bringing Mateta back? Do you feel it's a gamble to any extent?
Listen, we've seen a lot of players play with face masks and headbands and all sorts of things in the past. And I'm sure if Mateta's comfortable, he has to play. He's their best forward. And it's a massive game for Palace, isn't it? It's an FA Cup quarter-final. We know they've been to an FA Cup final in recent years, I think in 2016, and lost that one. But for Palace to get to a semi-final, for an FA Cup final, a place in Europe potentially, it's a huge game, a huge few weeks for Crystal Palace. So I'm sure Mateta's desperate to play. And I think, it's an unusual, protection for his head, but I'm sure it works if he feels confident in it and happy to play after what happened against Millwall. It's great for Palace. So, I'm all for it. I think it's great that he's playing in it, and I hope he does well.
OK, we'll see what Danny Welbeck does against Nottingham Forest as well. Ian's done a feature with him in the FA Cup game that kicks off at 5:15 on Saturday. Ian, what kind of form did you find Welbeck in then as a seasoned veteran now, I suppose? You've contrasted his recent appearances in the FA Cup with those of his debut at Manchester United.
Yeah, I showed him a little video on my phone, actually, of his first ever FA Cup goal, which he scored in his fourth appearance for Manchester United as an 18-year-old at Southampton, a header from by a yard. Of course, he scored the goal that got Brighton through the last round against Newcastle, a much better goal. He's 34 now. Those are the bookends of Danny's career at the moment. It was lovely to see him on great form. He still has the best Manchester accent in the Premier League by an absolute mile. He's never going to lose that. He was absolutely full of it. We know his story. We know the injuries that he's had. We know the recoveries that he's made. We know his quality. Some people would have had him in the England team or in the England squad this last time. He did tell me, by the way, that Thomas Tuchel hasn't been on the phone. He isn't one of those players who's yet had the phone call as a fringe player. So maybe a little bit more work for him to do. But it's a great, it's a story of a career well spent and a comeback. He's now played more games for Brighton than any other club in his career, more than Manchester United, more than Arsenal. He has won the FA Cup 2 times, both with Arsenal, and I can tell he was absolutely desperate to do it again. It was just lovely to spend 45 minutes with a genuine footballer who's been through a bit and has come out the other side. And by the looks of him, looks as though he may have 3 or 4 good years left in him yet.
And Mark, give us 30 seconds, if you can, on Danny Welbeck. You must have covered him earlier in his career. He's a brilliant story, and he's become a better player in his 30s, a better finisher, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking at his stats before the show, and his England record it's better than 1 in 3, and it really is up there with the best England strikers. Apart from the likes of Alan Shearer and Harry Kane, but always delivered for England. Had a great career at United and Arsenal, and I think if United, 10 years after selling him, I'm sure they take him back now as a great option for their front line. So a great player, great career, and a great piece to read.
A final note from your paper, Ian, as well. 200,000 to greet Cup heroes of Newcastle. It's going to be live on Sky Sports News. It's one of the biggest sporting events of the weekend for me. I'm really looking forward to this. How emotional and passionate will it be? Your man, Craig Hope, no doubt, will be in attendance. Give us 20 seconds on this.
Well, it will be emotional and it will be passionate. One thing I did notice in that piece by Craig was apparently there's a plan to show the whole game again during the parade. The whole game. They're clearly expecting to be out there on the Town Moor for quite a while, and I hope they enjoy themselves. They've more than waited for it.
It's going to be a long and passionate evening, no doubt. So, been a good evening with you. Thank you very much, Mark and Ian. Appreciate it. See you on Backpages tonight soon. Thank you for watching the show. If you missed it, remember it's on again. Backpages tonight at hour. Also available as a podcast. Just download Backpages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Up next on Sky Sports News, previewing the FA Cup games. Getting those comments again as well from Pep Guardiola, who doesn't think that his City players deserve any kind of bonus after the season they've had, regardless if they win the Club World Cup or not.